Hi guys, JLA Shorts has now arrived. The best bits of the JLA channel in nugget form. Be a legend and subscribe to the channel by checking the link in the description. Cheers. Do you do chicken? No. Do you do beef? No. But do we deliver? Yes we do, because this is the relegation battle video that you wanted. Hot off the back of the top 4 video we did, where we dived into the last 5 fixtures and see how these teams are getting on. Then we put forward strengths, weaknesses. Then after that, I've got a bit of a theory, and we've made a little tweak to it for the relegation places. We're going to put forward the big games that could really offer up some points, and also some points that they won't be able to get. More on that a little bit later on. And then I will reveal the 3 teams that, after diving into and jumping into and bathing in this melting pot of deliciousness, or apprehension if you're one of the teams or one of the fans involved in the teams, I will say the 3 that I think are going to be going down. And you guys, of course, can do exactly the same in the comments. Before we get into the video, hit the subscribe button. Do me a favour. I'll give you a couple of seconds. 1, 2, a 3, and a 4, and a thank you for doing that. Also hit the like button as well if by the end of this video you've enjoyed it, or if you know you're going to enjoy it, so you might as well hit like anyway. 5,000 likes. That's the like target. Let's go. Now, before we dive into this completely, I do want to tell a story and a bit of a caveat to this, right? Because relegation is close to my heart, sadly. Queen's Park Rangers have gone down twice from the Premier League, 3 times, sorry, in my life from the Premier League, but also we've stayed up once as well. And I got to tell you, it is a buzz. So I would say stick at it. And what is so good about the teams down the bottom is that to a point, you can win any game, and they do start to win any of these games. So although we're looking at some of the games that they should win and might not win, it is so up for grabs when it comes to the relegation places. And also, people will laugh at you. A friend of mine was talking about Burnley a couple of weeks ago, and he goes, I think Burnley got a shout. Those people that he spoke to laughed at him.
You all laughed at me.
Laughed in his face. Look at him now.
Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
In with a shout. So things can change. Any team can beat anyone in the Premier League. That's why we like it. And so have faith is what I'm saying. If you're a fan of any of these teams, it is going to get tense. But it's kind of why we're football fans as well. So let's dive into it. Let's kick off first and foremost with the last 5 fixtures for some of these teams and what this kind of says. And also a kind of bit of myth busting here as well in terms of like how unfair maybe some of these stats might be. So Brentford on a really tough run of games at the moment, not doing very well. But what is interesting here is 1 point from 15 is obviously absolutely woeful. But they played Man United, Wolves, Man City and Arsenal in that run of games. The most scary thing of those last 5 fixtures, I would suggest, is the draw against Palace, because that's one of those games that you should be winning. And if you look at the XG overall, it's pretty amazing actually. Their XG difference is in the positive numbers, 0.54. Of course, it's close, but as you'll see with some of these other teams, in terms of the chances that they're giving away and the chances that they're creating, the XG is pretty solid for them, which is something we probably would expect from Brentford, as they are a team that does dive into those stats and commits to them as well. And it is amazing, actually. You know, that Brentford game, 1.9 expected goals, didn't get a goal out of that game, but maybe that tells another story as well. On the other side of it, Leeds United. Now, this is amazing. Let's zoom in just a little bit, just so you can see it a little bit better. This is mad. I mean, they play so open, so open. And this means that they create often a little bit more, but actually in these last 5 games, they've actually done less than Brentford, who you think of being quite a boring defensive side. Leeds United just conceding a hell of a lot of goals, though. The expected goals that they have conceded is 12.1. So again, put that into context, 6.29 expected goals to be taken in. Leeds 12.1. So, and even if you go, okay, well, one of those games is against Leeds. Let's take away Leeds and make it down to 4 games and not a 5-game database. That's still, the XG of that is 4.37. So you've still got an expected goals from a game less of 8, which doesn't bode well. And they've got 1 point from 15 as well. So their expected goal difference is really bad at the moment. Everton. Obviously, the form for all of these teams generally is pretty bad. The really scary thing for Everton here is the fact that playing Norwich, Villa less so, but Newcastle, teams around you Leeds, great victory, of course, in that one. Southampton, these are games where you would have thought, okay, let's get these points, let's get this season done, let's have another mid-table one and we'll move forward. But 3 points from 15 is pretty scary stuff. And when you've played those teams twice, that's the end of it. That means you're going to have to play some of the other teams. Expected goal difference is really, really poor as well. Newcastle United, great form. Doing really, really well. Got that new manager bounce in the end, but it's taken a few months, I guess, and obviously some transfers as well. And we'll dive into that a little bit more in a sec. But yeah, it's a good run of games. It was a run of games where they needed to get points, and this is what Everton needed to be doing, because if they weren't picking up points in this period, then you would have been very, very concerned. But they have done so, been a lot tighter at the back and offering a little bit more going forward as well. Their XG is pretty strong when it comes to their XG difference as well. So the form team when it comes to these relegation battlers. Watford, I mean, a bit of a mix here, really. And we'll dive into it a little bit more, is that XG difference is not severely bad, which is what it was prior to Roy Hodgson coming in. 4 points from 15. We'll dive into that in more detail when we talk about the strengths and weaknesses of them. But that is a positive thing, actually, despite obviously the defeats recently and a set of games where, again, you should be getting more than 4 points. Burnley, what a cracking little run they're starting to go on. And I think the thing that you've got to say with Burnley is that they will be in every single game that they play. And this is a tough run of games. Man United, a huge football club. Liverpool, that's a tough game. Brighton is not an easy one. And the XG on all of these is interesting. They've got the lowest XG out of all of the teams in this. But their expected goals against is pretty tight as well. Got themselves maybe the rub of the green in a couple of these games, especially when you look at that Brighton game. XG was 0.64, but still got 3 goals out of it. And maybe getting the draw against Manchester United. But again, this plays one part in it. There are so many ingredients when we're talking about teams, and we'll dive into that as well. Understandable, but 7 points out of 15 out of those 3. I think they probably would have taken that when they saw those 5 games. Again, the concern is in terms of scoring goals. But again, those 2 games against Man City and Liverpool are very, very difficult and are going to skew their XG a little bit. Right then, let's visualise this with the help of my beautiful boy, Kai. Thank you very much for this, Kai. So points per game over the last 5 games. Newcastle United well out in front, but of course, Burnley and Norwich doing okay as well. You move on to the next one in terms of XG. I think that will be interesting to a lot of people, that Brentford's XG is as impressive as it shows there in these last 5 games, especially in a set of games that you've had some difficult moments in there, because I think a lot of people are concerned by them. Next one, expected goals against. That's where you've got to be a little bit scared if you're Norwich, but we want to take into account it was Man City and Liverpool as part of those games, and also Leeds miles out in front. And obviously those 2 are reflected in the final one at the end there. Again, you can see how Leeds are being very porous at the moment. Right, let's talk strengths and weaknesses, kicking off with Brentford. I think the first thing to say is the fact that this is their first year, and I think that's helpful. The adrenaline is there. Maybe less so for some of those teams that bounce up and down a few times. You've been there before, but they're popping their cherry, the Brentford fans, and they're enjoying themselves, and so they should. And with the ground as well, the new ground, I've been there, and you say 17,000, okay, that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have a stadium that's full, it can be rocking, and that Brentford stadium is rocking at the moment. And I think with it being their first season, I think that's a huge strength for them to have in the home games, which are going to be so important for Brentford. The fixtures are really important for them as well, which we'll dive into in a second. And in particular, actually, the next 3, which I can say to you, Newcastle, Norwich, and Burnley are the next 3. The other thing I think with the XGs is a positive is the fact that these games are tight. And I think if these games are tight and you're getting into the end of the season, you hope that desire that you have in terms of having something to really, really play for will help get you over the line and take those chances. The only problem is that, mentally, over the last 4 or 5 seasons, they have had a bit of a history of bottling it a little bit. I don't think that's going to happen. It could happen. But the psychology of being in a good position and getting sucked into the mire, that's not nice, right? And that's all I'm trying to say, really. I think the thing to remember, though, I think the thing that outpowers it is the fact that it is the first season. So I think that will equal itself out a little bit. And I think we've got to talk about the finishing, because with the XG being tight, it's earlier in the season where they were getting a lot of these points is because they were taking their chances. It's starting to fall away. Despite the XG being pretty solid, the goals to shots is dropping, and it's 0.08, which is the same as Everton, Burnley, Newcastle, and the other teams around them. So prior, that's what kind of gave them that difference, is they were sort of effective in getting the XG that was needed and then taking the chances. They've stopped taking the chances. Leeds United, strengths. Greatest strength for me is Rafinha and the unique style of play that they have here. We spoke about second season syndrome at the start of the season, and we thought that they would be okay due to that unique style of play. And I wonder if that could still come good. I think what we'd never concern ourselves with is injuries. And obviously, Patrick Bamford is a huge part of that. And you can see that from Rafinha's numbers. In terms of goal scoring, he's done brilliantly. 9 goals compared to 6 last season. Last season, I think we were all waxing lyrical about him. But this year, in terms of his goal-creating actions, it's more than halved. Last season, it was 0.53 goal-creating actions per 90. This season, it's down to 0.25. That is both a weakness, obviously, in the past, but I wonder, and we're still kind of waiting for Patrick Bamford, but if you can get him back for even 5 games, I think that could be the difference. Because I think this unique style of play that Leeds have, if you've got enough of the components to do it, it is a good style of play. And that is the biggest weakness, the lack of forward presence. The goal and XG statistics kind of really show that. In terms of exceeding your XG this year, the only 2 players to do it, Jack Harrison, plus 1.6, Rafinha, plus 1.8 in terms of the XG that they've accrued and the goals that they've scored. The total XG last year was 57.5, and their expected goals against was 62.9. So again, an expected goal difference of 0.54 over the entirety of the season. To put that into context, this season, the expected goal difference over the entirety of the season is minus 17. Everton, in terms of strengths, I think, well, look, the squad is probably the best of any other teams there, I would say, in terms of personnel. It's certainly very close. It certainly should be anywhere near this kind of relegation battle right now. And a big part of that, I think, is the fact that Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't been available, and now he is available. So if he can stay fit, you would imagine that both in what he offers the team generally and then the goals as well, that will help them get there. I think also the FA Cup could be a lovely distraction for them. Boreham Wood coming up. That's a game where, you can get the morale maybe up after some tough games. The weaknesses of it is, first of all, I think the pressure on Everton. This phrase that everyone's going to go around saying is they're not too big to go down. And that is completely the truth. And the pressure that the club and the fans put on them as well, which again is understandable because they're a huge club. But at Goodison Park, when it's rocking, I mean, it's outrageous, right? But when it's going wrong, it's a really, really tough place to play. A really, really tough place to play. And, think about the next game that they've got to play in terms of the feeling of the club and them getting dragged into all of this. And we'll get into the fixtures as well, which I think is a weakness for them. They've got Man City next. Man City next is a tough one. And that could, if you have a heavy defeat there, the doldrums really, really set in. The club tenses up, the players tense up, and it could be a very, very long road for them. And when we talk about pressure and the financial pressures that Everton have on them as well, relegation is just completely unthinkable. And it has to translate through to the players at some point. Newcastle United strengths. I think the atmosphere at the club is really, really strong at the moment. I think Eddie Howe has got a system in place that is understood by the players and you've got the right personnel for. I also think the players that you've brought in so far have all hit the ground running, apart from Chris Wood in terms of the goals, but I think his output otherwise. He won more aerial duels than any other player last weekend. That's what he offers as much as the goals. And I think Dan Burn's been absolutely excellent. Matt Target looks solid there, and Trippier has been brilliant as well. And you haven't even played Bruno Guimaraes yet, which I think he's a huge, huge signing. So you've got that, hopefully, that added quality that he can bring, and he hasn't even been involved yet. And there's just a lovely feeling around the club because probably of the form that gives you that element of momentum, so much so that you cannot have Trippier or Alan St-Maximin and get yourself a draw against West Ham. The weakness is, I think Trippier is a huge, huge loss. Massive, massive loss for them. In terms of weaknesses, that Trippier injury could be absolutely huge. When you think of Emil Kraft coming in instead, I mean, he's not anywhere near, he can't even lace the boots of Trippier. And Trippier wears Velcro boots, so you think he'd be able to do that. The other thing for me is the fact that complacency could be a part of this. I know it sounds odd, but they've kind of had that, excitement and go, oh, okay, I think we're going to be all right. But at the same time, there are all these other teams sort of fighting for their lives. And that 1 or 2% could be huge. I think the good feeling should be enough to get them over the line. It really, really should. But that Trippier that Trippier injury is a really, really big one. So they've got to be careful and switched on. They've also got a squad of players that were probably going to be thinking, am I going to be here in the summer? Watford, the biggest strength is Roy Hodgson for me. You know, the calm that he brings, the experience that he brings, and the sort of incremental changes of building a foundation and a base defensively and then kind of going from there. The weakness for them is the fact that, have you got time for that? Have you got time for the incrementals? You know, would they have been better off going full force and kind of just going for it with that attacking verve? They had lost that a little bit, but of course got a victory recently. I wonder if they've got time for this. And with the handbrake being pulled on quite severely, you then get into games where they might be a little bit tighter and you might get some of these 0-0s, but will you be able to go for it enough to get yourself the goals that you need? I know that's slightly contradicting to what's been said in the other teams. You look at Brentford, Burnley as well, which we'll talk about in a second. But I think there is something in that. But it's weird. I kind of look at the weaknesses. It seems a bit blasé and it's like I haven't done the work really. But what I would say is there are enough kind of names in that squad. I worry about the defence massively. I really do worry about the defence and how you get through the lines through that defence. But you've got a lot of solid names. Bottom line is, it's more of a question for me is, do they have the talent? Have they got the talent in there? Because up top, I think you have got some good players. But Josh King has been relegated before as a leading man, leading striker for a team. Ismail Assar was also as well. So can those 3 or 4 players drag them over the line? And do they have a very clear way of playing to be effective going forward to get themselves the goals that they need? Burnley making a real charge for it, and bloody good luck to them. I do like Burnley personally, and the things I like about them, first of all, it just counters XG logic a lot of the time. It is literally 2 fingers up when you look at Dijkbal and how they're able to kind of stick in there a lot of the time. I think the other thing, the best compliment I can give them, and people will probably not concentrate on this, they as a squad are mentality monsters. They are, because instead of being the names or having those little flourishes or excitement and flair that even a Watford have, Burnley don't have that, but they are a team and they don't panic. They keep sticking to the way that they want to play. Dyche offers that as well. It doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, and that means that they're always in with a fighting chance. And I think they've proven that in the last few weeks as well. They've also quite possibly become a better team after the transfer window, despite losing someone like Chris Wood, which felt like such a power move from Newcastle. You've gone and got Weghorst through the door. And you look at the 11 now, and you would probably say it's a little bit better. I mean, it is. Weghorst is a better striker than Chris Wood. So that's a massive strength for them. The weaknesses, a few things that we've spoken about before. Lack of pace at times when it comes to, apart from McNeil and Cornet. That's it, really. Especially in wide areas, they struggle for that. But look, when you've got Rodriguez and Weghorst up there, you're playing a different style. I think the other thing to say is that it is a light squad. It really, really is. And although they are the sum of the parts, you do need that little bit of quality to get yourself over the lines when the XG is as tight as it is. And last up, Norwich City. I think people thought they were done and dusted in terms of the relegation fight. So for them to be in with a chance, I think is a positive already. There's not that same pressure to stay up as there is with other clubs in this relegation battle. I think you've got a proven poacher in Pookie, all the P's there, and also with the way that Dean Smith has come in and solidified this team, and I really like Dean Smith as a manager. Him and Shakespeare, I think it's a great team to have at Norwich, even if you do go down. But with that low block, that kind of that suits Pookie. The biggest weakness for Norwich is that they're a sensible, sustainable football club. So they don't play an outrageous amount of money for different signings. They try and make do, or they try and be clever, or they give people an opportunity. And that can lead to you having a lack of quality. And I think that is the problem for Norwich City that they've had throughout, is that I think the attitude overall has generally been there. I think they were far too open earlier in the season. But as time progressed, they're starting to find their feet in the Premier League, but can they flourish in the Premier League to get themselves the points to stay up? Right, onto the fixtures. Now, what I've done here, because when it comes to the relegation battle, like I said a couple of times, you can beat anyone. You can beat a team that's going for the Champions League. But there are a couple of teams I don't think you can beat. So what I've done here, which is similar to the top 4 video, and most importantly, shout out to the other 14. They are the OGs. They are the inspiration for this. Go check out their Twitter account. It's absolutely fantastic. The other 14. Because basically the idea is completely stolen from them. And thank you guys for allowing me to do it. But what I've done here is the other 12. So when it comes to the other 12, the idea is that you should win your home games against easier teams. That's how, when everyone says you've got to win your home games, I think that's important. And in particular, when it gets to a relegation battle, when it comes to a relegation battle. So these are the fixtures versus the other 12. So not that top 8 teams that we're talking about, which could be tough, at home, and the points that could garner. But what I have chucked in here is if they have to play Man City or Liverpool, because I believe those two are so far ahead and are going to be working so hard to win the title that really I don't see them, and again, you never know, but I don't see them getting points against these guys. So as we're trying to find a way to figure out who might be going down, what I'm doing is offering up those 3 points for each of those home games against the other 12, but then I'm taking off 3 points in terms of points that you could go and get, because I don't see them getting those points if they're playing Man City and Liverpool. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's make our way through this. Brentford, first and foremost, as I say, really huge next set of games. The next 3 are massive, and Newcastle and Burnley are within that at home. I think is it Everton, the other one? I'll go back earlier in the video, you'll see it. Southampton, they play at home as well, and then Leeds on the last day. I repeat, that's Leeds on the last day. Could be huge. And actually, all these guys have got to play each other, which is so exciting. They do not have to play Man City and Liverpool, which is huge, as you will see in a second. So Brentford, with that would put them 12 points further up if they were able to win those games at home. And then we're just going to play around with that for now, okay? Because you never know with the teams down the bottom. Leeds, they've got Villa at home, Norwich, Southampton, Brighton, 12 points from that. But they still need to play Man City. So we take away the 3 points. That puts them down to 9 points. I mean, the weird thing is with a Leeds United side is that they could go and get a draw against Man City and get a couple of players back. They've obviously done it in the past. And again, pinch of salt with all of this. But we're just trying to get a feel for how many points they should be able to garner. So 9 points for them. Everton. Yes. Newcastle, Palace, Brentford at home. And, I mean, Newcastle and the Brentford games are just huge for them. But at home, you know, the point is you should be trying to win those games and getting those points. So 9 points come from those. But they still have to play Man City and Liverpool. So in terms of the net points that I could see them getting from that, it goes down to 3 points. And of course, there is that middle ground of those other games, those away games, that will, I think, deep down decide who stays up and who goes down. Newcastle, Brighton, Palace and Leicester at home. 9 points from that. They've still got to play Man City and Liverpool. So they go down to 3 points. Watford, Everton, Leeds, Brentford, Burnley, Leicester. Really good fixtures for Watford if they can start to find the form, be tough to beat and get themselves some goals down the other end. So the 15 points are there and up for grabs. Doesn't mean they've got them. They still have to play Man City and Liverpool. That brings it back down to 9. Burnley, Leicester, Southampton, Everton, Villa, Newcastle. Last game of the season. So Brentford, Leeds and Newcastle. Burnley playing Newcastle on the last game of the season. 12 points. They have to play Man City as well. And they always lose 5-0 to them. So that means that they could get 9 points as we go through this theory. And then Norwich, the only teams they've got to play at home. That's why I was looking at that Palace game. I was thinking you needed to win that one. Still got to play Brentford, Burnley and Newcastle. I mean, all teams around them. And so again, like I can't reiterate this enough. They don't have to play Man City or Liverpool. And when you are down there scrapping, absolutely anything can happen. But with the home crowd, I think it does give you that little bit of advantage. So if it were to play out that way, and of course that wouldn't be the end of the season, of course they've got to play each other again as well, and of course this is all pointless, but it is just a bit of fun. The points that they would have if they win those home games each. So of course this is football, that isn't the end of it, but if you added up those points and put them onto the points that these guys have at this moment in time, the table would be like this. Norwich would have 26 points, Everton would have 26 points, Newcastle would have 27 points, Watford would have 27 points, Burnley would have 29 points, Leeds United would have 34 points, and Brentford would have 38 points. So, I know it's a bit of a concoction. I know those points are a little bit odd, but what I'm saying is I think that offers up the possibility, the opportunity that is there for these teams and who's sort of cycling uphill a little bit here and who's cycling downhill. So I think with that in mind, I think Brentford are going to be fine, you know. I think they will. I think with the XG that's there in place, it's not the prettiest football. The adrenaline of being the first season, and the games that they've still got to play, and the fact that those other games won't be against Man City or Liverpool, I think gives them just a really, really strong chance. And the fact that these teams are playing each other so much. And what happens with that, it means that both teams can't secure 3 points. At the very worst, they both get a point, which is not really any good to anyone at this stage. So I think actually the points total is going to be super, super low because they've all got to play each other so much. And if some of those are draws, that's not the end of the world. But I think Brentford will be fine. In terms of teams going down, I think Norwich will definitely go down. And I'm sad to say that, and I really would like to see them stay up, probably more than any other teams in this, just because I think of the way that they run. I think they give hope to others. Certainly as a QPR fan, they give a little bit of hope, but it feels very difficult, and I think you have to jumpstart your squad when you move into the Premier League because the gap's so big, and they never did that. So despite being solid, I think it's going to be a little bit too tough for them. So I think Norwich will finish bottom. I think Newcastle will stay up. I think they'll find a way to get there. The loss of Trippier is huge, but I think they will secure enough, and they do need to play a lot of the teams around them, and I think they can get some victories from that as well. So I think Newcastle will be fine. After that, it is really hard to place it because I think Leeds, with the amount of injuries that they've had, it's a massive, massive problem for them. It really, really is. But having looked at that with the games that they've got to play and what could come from those games, I think that attacking style of play, I think it will be enough. And I think Leeds United will stay up. And I think that would be one hell of an achievement from Bielsa that he probably won't get credit for ever. But with the amount of injuries that they've had and the lack of quality that their squad has as well, in my opinion, I think that would be quite an achievement for them. I am worried about Everton, I've got to say. And I think there's no reason why it couldn't be Watford finishing second bottom and Everton finishing third bottom. I think it's really down to those players now. Have they got the heart to stay up? And I've got to be honest, I keep looking at it and I'm really struggling to sort of find the change in it. I think it will be Watford and Everton. I think Burnley are showing what they always show, where they're going to keep calm and accrue points and win games ugly and live in that space where it is ugly and actually love it. And absolutely love it and relish it. Whereas I think Everton, it feels like they're sinking a little bit. Despite the quality that they've got, there's no reason for them to go down. But there's so much money in the league now. There's so many good players in the league. And so no one deserves a chance. And I think that the nous, as opposed to the inexperience of someone like Lampard in that situation, is very, very difficult for him. Add to that the fixtures that they've got as well. It's a tough time for them. And I think it could be Norwich, Watford and Everton. And Burnley just about sneak out, which is incredible. And I don't think I would have said that a couple of weeks ago, but the last couple of performances from Burnley, and having looked at it all and the games that they've got still to play, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go for them to win some of those ugly games. And yeah, I do. I just think it's been an absolute disaster of a season from Everton from 4 games in onwards. And I think it's a cup final for these other teams when they go and play them as well. And I'm not sure that suits them. That's just how I feel. I might be totally wrong on this. Let me know how you feel as well. Let me know who are the 3 teams you think will go down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed what we've done here, trying to offer up some value and just give a different aspect and perspective on all of this, then please do consider hitting the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 200k as quickly as possible, and I need every single one of you to hit that button. So please do consider doing it. Hit the like button as well. 5,000 likes would be lovely. And I'll see you in the next one.